Hi, this is Natalie Rydstrom from SBR Picks. Now, domestic football is taking a break whilst players focus on their international duties. So this gives us a chance to reflect on news that's hitting the headlines this week and how they may or may not affect the odds. Joining us now to lead the discussion is William Hill's betting pundit and all-round football fan, Lee Phelps. Lee, welcome to the show today.
Hi, Natalie. You're right.
Good, thank you. Well, first headline making its rounds is the Rooney Rule. Can you tell me more about it, please?
Yeah, obviously it kind of came from the NFL, where the basic idea behind it is the NFL obviously wanted to get more ethnic minority coaches into the game, and so the basic idea is that there must be at least one candidate from a certain background where you want to obviously increase the number of people from that background in the job, and it doesn't have to apply to sport. You get this kind of thing in politics as well. I know the Conservative Party did it in Britain a little while ago, and the Labour Party followed suit to get more women into Parliament here. So it's that kind of idea, and it's come about because obviously there simply aren't enough. I mean, I suppose it's mainly concentrated around black managers in the English football game. You see how many black players there are in the English game and how fantastic they are, and what a huge percentage of the actual playing staff they take up in the Premier League and the Football League as a whole. Why aren't there as many black managers? We have 2 at the moment. It seems ludicrous. So I guess that's where it's come from. There's been this conversation going on for a while, and it just seems to have hit the headlines recently because it was supposed to be introduced at a meeting recently, and there was no real mention of it. So understandably, people started to ask questions, and rightly so. If it helps, then what's the problem?
But the question is do you think that black people are being discriminated against? I saw a post-match press conference with Jose Mourinho where he simply said, if they're good, whoever is good for the job gets the job. Do you think that football would discriminate?
Well, I mean, I guess my opinion is probably pretty irrelevant, but you look at the head of the PFA saying that he thinks there is a general, almost behind the scenes, there's something there, there's something hidden that stops this process happening properly. You speak to former black players who've been in the game for a long, long time, 18-year careers, 20-year careers, have done every single coaching license they can possibly do. They've got every qualification that it's possible to have been sending CV after CV after CV, 30 CVs sent in, 2 interviews. Mm-hmm. Doesn't make sense, does it? They're playing the game their whole life. They've got every coaching qualification you could possibly get. Send out 30 CVs and you only get 2 interviews. I mean, just if you did that, Natalie, in your work, you'd be a little bit like, why have I only got 2 interviews? Yeah. I've sent out 30 CVs. I'm qualified for all these jobs. So I guess that's where it's come from. Why aren't there as many? Now, there is a flip side to this, and one reason why it might not work as well in football in the UK as it works in the NFL. In the NFL, if a club is looking for a coach, then they have an interview process. They will put out people will send in their CVs, their resumes, and there will be a system where they're shortlisted, and then the interviews will take place. Well, in football, it doesn't always work like that, does it? You look at Crystal Palace, for instance. When Tony Pulis left, they didn't open it up for people to send the CVs in. The owner or the chairman will maybe have an idea of who they want to go and get, so they go and talk to those people. He went to talk to Tim Sherwood, for instance, and Malcolm McCann. That didn't work out, obviously. And then he goes to talk to someone else. In football, a lot of it's done through, I know this guy. He worked really well at a division that I was working at the time, and I know his mate, I know this. And it's kind of who you know rather than a full interview process. So it might not work anyway. I think what would happen is that the lower league clubs, say your League 2 clubs, who do tend to do interview processes, then maybe it would start to work there, and you'd have to wait maybe even a generation for the black managers to be able to work their way through the divisions. Mm-hmm. I don't think many Premier League clubs open it up to CVs being sent in. That's not how it works in the world of football. So even if we introduced it, I'm not sure it'd have that much of an effect. But my opinion is, why not introduce it? What harm can it possibly do?
Right. And why has it surfaced now, and what, if anything, does it mean for football?
I think it surfaced because, as I was saying, that there's been a recent meeting of the FA, and it wasn't brought up when everyone was expecting it to be brought up as part of the meeting. It wasn't brought up, so the question marks hang over that meeting, and people were asking why, where's it gone? Why has it gone off the agenda? And so that's why it's been brought up again. And obviously, anything to do with race, anything to do with discrimination is a hot topic in the world of news. So in this age of 24-hour news on the TV and the radio, it's something that the media really latch onto, and rightly so as well in these certain cases where it needs to be brought to light. Football is such a huge part of the social makeup of Britain and England that I think it does need addressing. Why is this discrepancy between the amount of football fans who may be black and football players who are black compared to the people who are actually in the administration? We've seen from the NFL that it did work. It's brought up the levels of ethnic minority coaching up to, I think it's 12.5%. Well, the actual percentage of the population is 12.4%, so it's worked pretty perfectly in the NFL. It'd be interesting to see if it works in soccer in England. It's debatable, but why not give it a try?
Yep, well, that's certainly right there. Now, Arsenal are currently fourth favourite to win the title, price 21. However, with fresh news breaking that midfielder Mesut Ozil will be off for up to 12 weeks with knee injury, joining other injured midfielders Aaron Ramsey and Mikel Arteta, surely this must affect the Gunners' chances of either winning the title or ending up in the top four. What are your thoughts there, Lee?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's strange at Arsenal. Every season they seem to have more injuries than anyone else. Definitely more injuries than the other top top 5 or 6 clubs in the country. I don't know what it is. I mean, just bad luck, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, it has to impact on them. I mean, Ozil's had a pretty patchy start to the season, to be honest. Ironically, he just started to play fairly well. Just started to link up with Alexis Sanchez and Danny Welbeck, and they seem to be getting a bit of an understanding together. And then he goes and gets injured. So, I mean, they've got a lot of players like him, so I don't think they'll miss him that much. It's not like he's the linchpin of the side. But Ramsey's more important. I think Ramsey is a big miss. Ramsey, we saw at the start of last season how influential he was. When he got injured, they seemed to lose their way quite a lot, and I think we could see the same thing happen again. Arteta slowed down quite a lot since his Everton days. Does a job for them, but I think most people in the game think if you want to go on to the next level, then you need a player above Arteta's calibre. But it's 3 first-team players and 3 quality players who are missing from the team. In order of priority, I would say Ramsey's the most important, probably Arteta next because of the role he does in midfield, and then Ozil third. Notwithstanding the fact they're all great players. Look, I think the way Arsenal are going at the moment, I'm starting to wonder if they'll be pushed outside the top 4 this season.
Well, exactly. Well, another team here fighting to land in the top 4 is Manchester United, and with their back-to-back wins, they are now third favourite to win the title. And with possibly the top signing in the Premier League, Angel Di Maria, could they scoop the title, or is Chelsea too strong a team this year?
Chelsea are too strong. When Man United won't win the title, I'll give anyone any price they want. I can't see that happening. I mean, you mentioned those back-to-back wins, and as good as they are, and at the end of the season, it's just 3 points, and no one remembers what the games were like. But for the purposes of what we're doing, which is looking at games to bet on and predict what's going to happen in the next game, they were lucky to get away with the win against West Ham. They were lucky to get away with the win against Everton as well. They faded badly in the second half, played very well first half, scored the goals, as we talked about, Natalie, before those games. We thought there'd be goals in the first half, and then suddenly they lose their way in the second half. That West Ham game, as soon as Rooney was sent off, I don't think they had a shot on goal after that. I mean, it's a long time for a Man United team to not have a shot on goal. So I think there's still quite a lot of work to do there. They've got their own injury problems as well, Manchester United. I think they're just going to have quite an enjoyable season where the fans get to see them scoring lots of goals. They'll concede a few. They'll win some games 4-3. They'll batter some teams. They'll get beaten by the bigger teams, I think, is how it'll land. I still think they could sneak into the top 4, though, because I think Tottenham have got other things on their mind. Everton have got Europe on their mind as well. Liverpool, of course, in the Champions League for as long as that lasts. So I think they could, especially if Arsenal go if Arsenal start to fall away a tiny bit, I think Manchester United could sneak in there. But they've got a really hard run in, Manchester United. Usually they're these easy end to the season, or easy in inverted commas. They've got the top 6 from last season in their final 11 games. So they need to have improved to such an extent by the time we get to kind of mid-March for them to really be able to compete against the top 6 sides. I know they beat Everton, who were in the top 6 last season, but I'm not sure they can cope with Chelsea's and Manchester City's and maybe even the Liverpools and Arsenal's. I think they've had a relatively easy start to the season, Man U. So top 4, but I don't like the price. I mean, it's odds on at the moment for them to be in the top four.
Yeah.
I couldn't be touching that right now.
No, and I know last time I looked, actually, it was about 1.57 there to end up in the top four, which seems like incredibly low, considering like every week, they're so unpredictable. Every week they're back, then they're not, and then they suffer sort of a big loss there, and obviously time will tell. Say moving forward next week when the games commence. Can you see another win in store for Manchester United? And, where can you see them taking themselves?
Yeah, I think they'll be around the top four, top five, top six all season. I don't think they'll slip away again. I don't think they'll go much further down. It's just when it gets to the big games, I think they'll be found wanting, because what they're relying on right now is scoring more goals than the opposition. I know that's what every football team relies on, but especially with Manchester United, because they can't go into a game thinking we're going to keep a clean sheet. They won't be confident of that. So they need to get out quick and score lots of goals. When they come to play the big teams, they won't be able to do that as easily because the defences will be much better. I know we've got quality in Van Persie, in Rooney, in Falcao, in Di Maria, great players. But they would push further back by the good teams. The good teams will push them back and test their defence a lot more. I don't think they'll be able to cope. I think it'll be entertaining watching them trying to cope. But personally, I think they'll struggle against the bigger sides, and I think that will cost them in the end. But you don't have to beat the big teams to finish in the top four. You have to beat the big teams to win the title or finish in the top two. So I think top four is achievable. It's just from a betting point of view, I just don't like the price because they are so inconsistent.
I agree, yeah. Now, moving on here, news hitting the headlines this week suggests that football as we know it could change as the Premier League matches could be staged abroad, a concept that was suggested back in 2008 that was met with fierce criticism. Now, can you extend on this?
Well, I mean, yeah, in 2008, it's a bit different this time because in 2008 it was called the 39th game, and it was an extra fixture in the fixture list being played somewhere, wherever it is in the world, somewhere where they'll get lots of money, obviously. Now the idea this time seems to be that just one of the weekends, so one of the 38 game weeks, is taken out and played somewhere else. Now, there's anyone who follows the sport of rugby league in the north of England, they do this. They have one set of fixtures that is played in one stadium. Now, it's not taken abroad, because obviously no one would watch it abroad. It's not that big a game, but they play one set of fixtures in one stadium. So they'll play it, at the Millennium Stadium, for instance, for the weekend, or they'll play it in Murrayfield up in Scotland. And so there's 8 games across the whole weekend. It's been going on for a few years. Fans love it. It's great. I guess that's the same kind of thing here. You take it abroad, where I think it was 2 billion was generated in some of the TV revenue away from the UK. It's just an incredible amount of money. I mean, you see the crowd watching Real Madrid, Manchester United, a record for a crowd in the USA. I think it was 101,000 people, 103,000 people. I mean, that's just astonishing.
Yeah.
So if you can take a full weekend of Premier League fixtures to the States and play them, whether it's in one city or it's across a few cities, personally, I think, what's the problem? I think fans of the clubs would say, well, hang on a minute, we want to watch our team in Birmingham or in Manchester or in Liverpool or in London, wherever they're based. Mm-hmm. Why should our team be going away? We'll miss the game.
Well, yeah.
I guess the Premier League say, well, tough, it's all about money.
Well, exactly. That's what it is, isn't it? It's the fans here that's saying no. Don't take our club over abroad. But then does it boil down to, is it just money? Are we trying to spread sort of football, say, over to the States where it's not as popular? Or does it just all boil down to money?
Yeah, I think it pretty much boils down to money. I mean, you can spread the game, but it's not like it really needs spreading, I suppose. I mean, it's well known. It must be the most watched league in the world. So it's not like the brand needs to be brought to people's attention. I think what it would mean, especially to a US audience, is being able to see these players right in front of you would be special for them, and it would be a great thing to take to a foreign crowd, obviously. I suppose it depends. I mean, I can see the USA. That seems a very sensible thing to do. But then what if the next year it's Dubai and the crowds aren't quite as good, or it's not a particularly appreciative football crowd, it's just a corporate crowd who want to see it because it is the Premier League. Is that right? I mean, I'm not sure if that really works. If it was a genuine crowd who wanted to see these games, then I'd say that's absolutely fine. When I was in Brazil in the summer, you spoke to US football fans, as in US soccer fans, as they would call it, and they didn't. I would ask them, "Who's your MLS team?" They didn't really have one. Mm-hmm. They would be like, "Oh no, I'm a Chelsea fan." So they watched English football rather than watching MLS. So that's interesting. I think there would be a massive demand for it, just as when the NFL comes to London, it's in London 3 times this season in the NFL, it's a sellout because we don't get a chance to see the NFL live here. So when you do get that opportunity, I think it would be a fantastic success when it was in America, say, for instance. But I look, personally, I haven't got a massive problem with it, but then I'm not a fan of any Premier League team. So maybe if I was a fan of, say, Stoke City, I would be a bit disgruntled. I don't know. I don't really know. I think they're just making an argument out of nothing, really. And I think it'll happen eventually. I think the money's there to make it happen. And there'll be, I think the players will quite enjoy it. I mean, if you look at this week, for instance, perfect week, international week, you could probably get the internationals out of the way and the players then, make their way to a foreign, wherever it is, make their way to the foreign place, wherever it is. I mean, you think about the amount of South American players in the Premier League. Would it be easier for them just to fly to the States rather than having to come all the way back to the UK and be, get back on late Friday, for instance, and then have to play on the weekend? It'd probably be easier for some of the Premier League players to do that anyway.
Right. Now, what other headlines have interested you this week that could affect a team's chances in either a positive or negative way that have surfaced?
Yeah, I mean, regular viewers will know that I was quite keen on QPR before the start of the season. I've changed my mind quite quickly on that one. They look a poor team, and this week I think it started with William Hill, and then it's caught on all around the bookmaking fraternity. There was a major gamble on Harry Redknapp to be the next manager to be sacked or to leave his post. I think he went from around the 2-1 mark, so around 3.0, into kind of like 8-13 in a day. I mean, it was like it went really quickly in the course of a few hours, and he stayed there as well. So Alan Pardew, who was a favourite before, has lengthened out to just over 2-1. It's interesting because Harry Redknapp was saying at the weekend that he was blaming the pre-season that they had for the poor start that they've had, saying that his players didn't have the fitness to be able to compete. Now, when you watch them, that looks like it's evidently true because, I mean, they just can't get anywhere near some of the top teams. It's been embarrassing to watch them against Tottenham and Manchester United. West Ham beat them 2-0. So, I mean, I think QPR was struggling anyway. If Harry Redknapp was to go, I don't think that would necessarily be good news for them. They've got through a lot of managers recently. They've got a bit of stability with Harry Redknapp, and I think the best option is to keep him and let him get this job done and let him get his players to full fitness and see where they go there. If he was to be sacked, as the bookies think he's going to be, then I think they'd be in all sorts of trouble. I think getting another manager in now, the players, they've been promoted with Harry Redknapp. They've invested in him as he has in them. I think they've got to keep him. It's worth keeping an eye on that one.
Yeah, but the question is, Hilly, would you actually take the bet that Harry Redknapp will be the next manager to be fired?
No, not now because it's too short now. I mean, those manager markets are lethal as well. You'll see Alan Pardew, for instance. Alan Pardew was 10-1 on. Like 2 weeks ago, maybe even less than that. Now suddenly he's the second favourite, and all seems fine. Those manager markets react to Sky Sports News putting a ticker along the bottom of their screen where one of the reporters heard something from a guy who works at the stadium. It doesn't take much to move them, so I wouldn't touch it with a barge pole unless you know something, unless you've had an inkling and you've got on him at a good price. Then not odds on. I've been stung by that before.
All right then. Well, that wraps things up here for our Premier League news headlines. Lee Phelps, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks a lot.
The SBR network offers free sports picks and game breakdowns, big money free betting contests year-round, a real-time Vegas-style odds monitoring service, and much more. So come see for yourself. To stay updated on SBR news and promotions, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Google+, and do be sure to subscribe to the Sportsbook Review YouTube channel to catch all our daily sports shows.